hills of Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California. What you say about Los Angeles? LA got the people saying, Los Angeles.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, January 5th, just 5 days into the 2026 season here. And the LA Galaxy dealt a major blow with Riqui Puig scheduled to once again miss the entire season. So no Riqui Puig in 2026. We're going to talk about what that news was, how that came about, and what the LA Galaxy can do about it. A lot to talk about today. Especially about the future of the LA Galaxy, Greg Vanny, Will Kuntz. A lot of people's jobs are going to be on the line very quickly. All that revolving around how they react to this current crisis. To help me do all that, we're glad to have him back. It's Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter. Kev, happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Just don't wish anybody at the Galaxy a Happy New Year right now.
No, it's not a Happy New Year for them. It got off to a really bad start. It was like 36 hours old into the new year, less than that probably, before the news came. By the way, you know that intro says that this show is going to have MLS experts and insiders.
Right.
When do those guys show up?
I'm sure they're scheduled after us, so that's what it is. So Robin and Anda come on at 9 over on their podcast. That's definitely the ones. But wow, I'll be honest, that was a curveball. That was a curveball I did not see coming. Watching Tom Bogert, and let's just bring the tweet up because we got to start with it to begin with. Tom Bogert, this was breaking on January 2nd, about 12 p.m. Out here on the Pacific time zone here. LA Galaxy star Riqui Puig will undergo knee surgery, and his status for 2026 is in question, per sources. Same knee from torn ACL at the end of 2024, which kept him out all of 2025. Brutal news for one of the league's best players. Tom went on to call him Riqui Puig one of the most entertaining players as well. Kevin, has the article that you wrote, did that go live already? I did not.
It'll go up about 4 a.m. and it'll be in the paper tomorrow. But thank you for editing that, everybody. Josh and I working together for the LA Times now. I wrote a story about Riqui that will be up tomorrow, and Josh was very helpful in editing that. But that when the news broke, I immediately called because, as you mentioned, Tom Bogert had broke it, and I immediately called someone at the Galaxy to confirm that it was true before I went with it, because you never want to,
just assume.
Tom's never wrong.
Yeah.
Tom's never wrong, but it's my job to check. The Galaxy people I talked to were in a really, really bad mood. This was not the way they wanted to start the year. Generally you call and it's like, yeah, it's too bad. This is. But, I think you were the one that came up with it. The word, we heard it was just came up out of the blue. They were stunned. I mean, I've never talked to the Galaxy people that seem to have been floored in this way. They really were angry and didn't really know how to react.
Let's, and by the way, totally understand where they're coming from on this, right? The timeline of this, really, you have to go back. Riqui Puig has ACL surgery last year. That progresses throughout the year. The Galaxy did not put him on a season-ending injury list. That meant that they were hopeful that he would return. The Galaxy started 16 games winless. I'm sure we all love the history lesson in recounting last year in the start. The Galaxy goes 16 winless. There was no need to sort of rush him back or do anything, although I certainly think that there were times where if they wanted to accelerate that timeline, I think that they could have. They chose not to, which was probably the right call. all. We were told, we sort of had hints that perhaps he would play in the friendly at the end of the season after the Galaxy didn't make the playoffs. But all in all, everything pointing to the fact that Riqui Puig would be available in 2026. There was no reason to doubt that. His timeline, even if he was out for a year on an ACL, a year post-op is an acceptable timeline, an acceptable time frame. And so we were all watching that. The Galaxy put together a documentary about Riqui Puig and sort of his comeback and him dealing with the injury and coming back. Riqui Puig, I think just a couple days before this, goes on Instagram or wherever social media he does and basically says, I'm not going to say I'm back. It's because I never left. Basically reclaiming that he is back, that he's ready to go, that he can't wait for 2026. Everybody is, he's the face of the franchise again. He's showing up in the ads to do stuff. Everybody, and I mean everybody, from what I would assume Riqui Puig all the way to Will Kuntz and Greg Vanney and everybody, I'm sure Dan Beckerman and Phil Anschutz all expected Riqui Puig was going to be back. To then find out, and it felt like, certainly talking with some people around the club, like a bus had hit them. It was that sudden. It was that out of the blue that all of a sudden there was a problem and there needed to be another surgery. Now, I will go over Riqui Puig, who posted this picture on Instagram. I believe this is post-op from whenever he was doing it, but basically he says, after a whole year of working every day with a single goal in mind, yesterday at a medical checkup, the doctor gave me news you never want to hear. The plastic surgery wasn't good, and I had to go back to surgery. He goes, now I only have one thing on my mind, start working already, train with more excitement than ever, and try to be the Riqui Puig you all know again. More want, more hunger, more hungry, and more strength. I want to say a heartfelt thank you to my family, friends for always being there, but especially to Galaxy for how you have cared, respected, and supported me at all times. Also to you all for every message, every word of encouragement, and every token of affection that I've received these days. It really means so much more than you can imagine. I hope I will be back soon, better than ever, and wait for me. I really want to enjoy myself on the field again and to make you enjoy it as I have always tried to. I love you guys very much. And so that was Riqui Puig. That was translated from Spanish, excuse me. So that was the thing. So according to Riqui, and this is the only insight that we have on this right now, the surgery didn't take, but at this point, to say that the surgery didn't take, to say that all of the checkups that came through all this, Kevin, you have something in your article that says basically what, 20% of these end up having to have, have another surgery?
Well, Bogart called him one of the most exciting players in the league. I think he or someone else said one of the top 5 players in the league. In my story, and I believe this, I call him the most irreplaceable player in the league. He is more valuable to his club than any other player in the league, even more so than Messi is valuable to Inter Miami. Certainly Messi's valuable, but Riqui Puig, the team starts and stops with Riqui Puig. The team plays. Riqui isn't part of the style. Riqui is the style. The Galaxy are Riqui Puig. And we saw that last year when they didn't have him and they had the worst season in franchise history. Now, as far as the injury goes, 10 to 20% of reconstructive ACL surgeries, 10 to 20% of the time, a second surgery is needed, especially if it's an athlete who plays in a what's so-called pivot sport, which soccer is one of those. We saw Christian Press with Angel City. She got hurt 8 games into her first season at Angel City. She needed 4 surgeries, so the first surgery and 3 others before she could come back, and she started 3 games over her final 3.5 seasons with Angel City. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Riqui would need another surgery. I see 3 possibilities. And I have no idea which one is the most likely. I see 3 possibilities. One is the Galaxy somehow totally dropped the ball. You would think that with Riqui Puig, and I assume this to be true, that the Galaxy were all over this rehab, that they were monitoring it, that they were having him checked, that after each training session, how did it feel, that they were checking up on him. I have to believe, given his importance to the team, given the fact he's the 8th best player in the league, 8th best played player, he makes more than everybody except 8 guys. That they were checking on this. He's signed with them through 2027. It's an investment. They were checking on him. So I have to believe that the rehab was going well. Why didn't he play at the end of the season? The Galaxy told us that. They said, look, there's no reason for him to play. We wanted him to sort of be part of the playoff push. We're not going to the playoffs. There's no upside to putting him on the field, certainly in that friendly. There's no upside to having him play in a friendly where some, young Mexican player might try to make a name for himself by taking down Riqui Puig. So the Galaxy just said, look, that when you look at the cost effectiveness of this, there's no upside to this. We believe Ricky's healthy. Everything's fine. They let him go back to Barcelona, for the holidays. So maybe the Galaxy dropped the ball. I don't believe that. Maybe he just needed the second surgery. That happens a lot of times. Or there's one other possibility, and this is the possibility that I raised that really set the Galaxy off, and give me kind of a moment to explain this. But I said, did Ricky do something foolish that maybe he shouldn't have done? I'm not accusing him of anything. I'm just asking the question. And as a journalist, you need to ask the question. You need to assume the worst thing happened and then work backwards to find out what the problem was. You can't just go into any situation and say it's all rainbows and butterflies. This is an unfortunate incident. Well, what happened? Why is it? Why did this? Why did Ricky get hurt? So you have to sort of start with worst case scenario and work yourself back. Now, is that fair? Well, we've seen tons of athletes. The Jeff Kent, who just got elected to the Hall of Fame when he was playing for the Giants, he came to spring training one year with a serious injury. And he lied about it. It was found out that he got hurt in a motorcycle accident, which is prohibited in his contract. So, excuse me, after the World Series this year, or during the World Series, we asked a couple of Dodger players, Tommy Edman and Kike Hernandez, are you guys going to need surgery for your injuries after the season? They both said, no, we're fine, just a little bit of rehab. Within a week after the World Series, both of them underwent surgery. So, right. Yeah, athletes lie about this all the time. They try to sort of get away with it. And in Ricky's situation, here's a 26-year-old guy who feels bulletproof, who's been active his whole entire life. He's 15 months into his rehab. He's feeling good. What's to stop him from maybe, playing a game of soccer at a little higher speed than he's played in a while? Or maybe he stepped on a basketball court or played tennis or pickleball, anything.
Maybe he took a step wrong.
Took a step off a curb.
It could be anything, but I want to be clear. There's nothing that we have seen that says that that's the case, right? This is us.
We're just
being
asking
speculative.
questions
Yes.
at this point, and I think it's right for us to ask those questions. If the Galaxy, no one's told me what happened. No one told me how we got to this situation. So until I'm told what happened or offered some evidence, I'm going to ask the questions, because this just, as you said, the term you used, this just came out of the blue.
Yeah, and that's sort of where it gets crazy. It's bad timing. The Galaxy should be reporting into camp here in the next 10, 15 days. I mean, we're right there where Galaxy should be getting ready to come back to camp. I haven't seen the official date yet, but I know it's coming. So we know that that's happening. We know that the Galaxy have gone out and made this sort of what we've been calling the defensive revolution, right? With Guesman and Hack coming in and sort of revitalizing thing. All of these things were done, Kevin, with the
based on
expectation,
Ricky, that Ricky would be there. Yeah,
that Ricky would be there. And that's where this hurts. Now, the timing is not, we can call disaster. It is a disaster in terms of you cannot find anybody else to sort of play the way that Ricky plays, right? This is going to be very difficult for you to do that. So you need to find somebody who's going to be creative. And we saw that, really Paintsel and Peck, they need the service. And the number 9s, whether that's going to be Ramirez or anybody else, they need the service. They need to find somebody there. We watched last year as Marco Royce, who played a ton of minutes, by the way, played about 2,000 minutes total when you look at it. I think something like 28 games overall. But we saw that there's limits to his participation and what he can do in that. The Galaxy don't have Diego Fagundes anymore, which was sort of in that spot. And the Galaxy, listen, I don't think that if Riqui Puig was gone again, that the Galaxy were necessarily going to be able to afford Diego Fagundes again, and nor do I think maybe that's the best replacement for what we were trying to get from Riqui Puig. But bottom line is, there was somebody who was in sort of that place to try and do things last year, that at the end of the season, the Galaxy, as Greg Vanney says, they were beating playoff teams, they were beating Mexican teams, they were doing things so the team did get better throughout that. The good news, I think, if you're an LA Galaxy fan, is there is time. This didn't happen 5 games into the season or 10 games into the season or 12 games into the season, right? This isn't something that popped back up and sort of now leaves them completely hamstrung. It wasn't like there was a play already made where they have already, sort of dedicated the money or the space or the timing or anything like that to, and there's no chance of a replacement. there is a chance for the Galaxy to go shopping. There is a chance for Will Kuntz to go shopping.
But yes, you're right. I mean, it's better that it happened now than in mid-March. But his first injury happened in November. It happened while they were still in the playoffs. And what did they do during the offseason? They got rid of Gaston Bergman. They got rid of Mark Delgado because they thought Marco Royce would be able to fill in for Ricky. And Marco was hurt a little bit at the beginning of the season, and he did play well, but he started to play well. I think his first start was when at 10 games in, the Galaxy were already winless in 10 games, and the season had gotten away from them by then. And so, yeah, hindsight is 20/20, but when Ricky got hurt the first time, the Galaxy, I don't think, acted with urgency. I think their feeling was Ricky would come back, in late summer, maybe for Leagues Cup, certainly for the playoff push, and that they would be fine. They could get through without him. That proved to be super optimistic, and it didn't work. This time, I think they have to act with a little more urgency. Unfortunately, they just gave Guesman and Hack $2 million. So that money they can't spend on a midfielder. I think they're almost, and I know you're going to talk about this, you have all the rules, but they're almost certain to put Ricky on the season-ending injury list, which means they get a DP spot and they get salary relief. His salary will not count. It doesn't count all of it anyways.
It does. It does. Here, let me go over the rules so that way people actually know what this is, because I know it's confusing in the whole deal. So season-ending injury list. If a player suffers a season-ending injury, a club may place that injured player on the season-ending injury list and receive roster relief, i.e. an open roster slot. Once placed on the season-ending injury list, the injured player will not be eligible to play for the club in any remaining competition during the MLS season. In the statement from the LA Galaxy, they said basically Puig is expected to make a full recovery and be ready to rejoin the team for the start of the 2027 season. There is no mention of 2026 in here. Therefore, it is going to be assumed that the Galaxy are going to be placing Riqui Puig on the season-ending injury list, something they didn't do last year.
Yeah, so they've gotten smarter already.
This is, you can't count your chickens, right? Let's see. The replacement player. A club may replace an injured player that is on the season-ending injury list with a replacement player in accordance with the parameters below. The club will remain responsible for the injured player's full salary budget charge. In this case, it's the max budget charge because a designated player takes up the max budget charge. Clubs are only able to receive salary budget relief paid out of the club's own pocket for a season-ending injury replacement under the following conditions. The injured player must be formally placed on the season-ending injury list prior to the opening of the secondary transfer window, which this is. The replacement player must be declared as such when being added to the club's roster. So whenever they go and get somebody, they have to declare that person as an season-ending injury replacement, and that has to all happen before the roster freeze date of September 12th. This was for last year, but in September will likely be the same one. The salary budget charge of the replacement player may not be more than the player who suffered the season-ending injury. That's impossible because a designated player costs exactly the same, so there won't be any more in there. If the injured player placed on season-ending injury list is a designated player, the club may replace such player with a designated player, provided that his salary budget charge is not more than the player he is replacing. Technically speaking, and this is where I always get into arguments with people, the replacement player's charge will not be charged against the club's salary budget. Basically, you're still charging Riqui Puig's budget charge against the salary cap, so that's the max budget charge. But the person you're adding does not get charged against the cap, so therefore it stays the same, right? You're only allowed to sign one such replacement player per MLS League seasons. The Galaxy get to do this, and my argument is if you're talking about the salary budget charge, in the case of a designated player, it's the max budget charge because that's what they get charged for whenever you're a designated player. So you can't charge anything more than that. So even if you went out and bought somebody who was, I think, $6 or $7 million, more than $5.4 million for Riqui Puig, technically speaking, the budget charge isn't any higher, so you can basically sign whoever you want. Now, there's a rules side of this that says, Kevin, and you and I were talking about this before we started, there's a rules side of this that says season-ending injury, get somebody else, replace Riqui Puig. Cool. Let's play the actuality of that now. You are responsible as the LA Galaxy for paying Riqui Puig's $5.4 million. Now, there could be insurance money in that, right? Because sometimes players are insured. So maybe the Galaxy don't have to foot the whole bill. Maybe they do have to foot the whole bill. It'll be really interesting to see what that ends up doing. But bottom line is somebody has to write out $5.4 million to Riqui Puig this year, whether he plays or not. Just like they wrote out the $5.4 million to Riqui Puig last year, whether he plays or not. So that is money the club has to spend. However, if you go get somebody else and you replace Riqui Puig, let's say you replace him with somebody who's $1 or $2 million. That's another $2 million the club has to outlay in order to get a replacement player. Now, most people will say, who cares? It's the LA Galaxy. And I agree that the Galaxy have deep pockets and this shouldn't be in effect. But somebody has to go to Phil Anschutz or Dan Beckerman and say, hey, we're going to go replace Riqui Puig with X player, and he's going to cost us $2 million more. And we need that $2 million because basically you're paying $7.4 million for the one spot now that you have with Riqui Puig and whoever else you're paying. So that's real money. Eventually, all this TAM and JAM and all the salaries, Kevin, get paid with real cash. I know it feels fake. It feels like monopoly money because that's how MLS sort of sets it up. But this is real money. And so the Galaxy have to be comfortable with paying said real money.
Well, and Uncle Phil is looking at this and said, you guys just asked me for $2 million for a couple defenders. Now you're coming back and saying the guy that I paid for his surgery twice now, that he's not going to be available, and that I paid over $10 million over 2 years for a guy who didn't play a minute. And now you're coming back and you're asking me for a couple $1 million for another guy who we hope will play. I think a couple of things here. First of all, Phil's probably going to do it because the stench of last season, he's got to do something to get rid of that. And the only way to get rid of that is a winning season. So he'll probably bite the bullet and do it, I would guess. But then there's the other thing. Let's say if you're going to get a designated player, you're going to get someone that could reasonably try to take Riqui Puig's place. It's going to cost you a little bit of money, and the guy's probably going to want a multi-year contract. So
yes,
how do you do that? Because Ricky's coming back. He signed through 2027. He's coming back at 5.8 or whatever it was. You said 5.4. I think the total cost is 5.8, but whatever it is, it's rich. He's coming back. That DP spot, he's going to take it again. So when you look at it, maybe the guy they get in is around 1.2, 1.3 million. Well, Ricky's still coming back, and that's still over the max budget charge. Can you do that with TAM? Marco Royce, his contract runs out at the end of the season. He's making just under 1.2 million. Maybe you bring a guy in for 1.2 and say when Royce leaves, that's how we're going to balance the books. It's interesting. I hadn't thought about this till you mentioned it, but again, I'm thinking unless they stumble into some great player, franchise changing player where they sign him to a big contract and decide to work everything out with the designated player spots next year, as they did with Zlatan. A guy who's making 1.3 is Diego Fagundes. That's what he made last season. He doesn't fit the bill. He's not exactly what you want, but you know what you're getting with him. Do they take the easy way out, maybe go get Diego Fagundes to come back?
Yeah, it's a question. I will say this. I think people are too focused on the 1 year for a designated player thing. No designated player that you're going to want to bring in, not even really probably a good TAM player is going to approach a 1 year contract. That's not going to happen. So what's up to Will Kuntz now is to go out and find a guy who they want, and to sign him to a contract that's at least a 1+1. That's a club option on a 1+1 is horrible. That's probably not going to happen. But a 2+1 is probably more likely. That's minimum, possibly even a 3+1. So what are you doing as the LA Galaxy to move forward? Because there are other questions here. And somebody in the chat actually asked it, Kevin, is what are the chances that when Riqui Puig does come back in 2027 that he is anywhere near the same player that he was? Now, 2 ACL surgeries. I think it's a good question. And with his contract coming up in 2027, which, by the way, does not mean currently that his contract will expire within the 14-game mini season that they're going to play, but actually expire in December of the
December
first
31st.
transitional season that we have, right? The 27-28 season. So midway through that 2027-2028 season. That's where the contract is. So one, Riqui Puig is coming back for 2027. It doesn't matter, by the way, even if he's hurt. Unless they can mutually agree to terminate a contract with, by the way, Riqui Puig is still owed a lot of money, and if there's question marks about him playing, there's zero chance he's giving that money up, right? So the Galaxy have to live with Riqui Puig in 2027, but that doesn't mean that they have to live with the 2 other designated players they have in 2027. And I think that that's the opportunity that the Galaxy sort of have to lean on now, which is go find a piece that you think is going to fit you long term, whether that's with Riqui or without Riqui. Sign that contract to the 2+1 or 3+1 is probably going to take you for a big designated player contract. What really stinks about the timing for this is that the Galaxy would have probably liked to have done this in the summertime whenever the market was open. But with World Cup and everything going on, that's going to be a mess of a summertime anyway. So maybe it doesn't work that well. But what you know is that in the wintertime, you overpay for your transfers. The Galaxy are going to have to overpay for their transfer, kind of regardless of where they go. I still think you go out and you find a designated player that you want on this team for the next 3-4 years, and you pay him the money, and whenever it comes to next year, you get into the Giovanni Dos Santos, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, too many designated players, blah, 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 whole deal, and you deal with it next year because Gabriel Peck is a guy who wants to go to Europe, and you could probably make that happen. Joseph Paintsel will be aging. Maybe you make that happen as well with a designated player. But bottom line is you might get a chance to get somebody ahead of when you were ready to get them, but that you're going to need in 2027 anyway. So this is the chance for the Galaxy to sort of dive into that. And I don't think that there is some ticking clock over them, like as in it has to happen fast. It has to happen fast. It does have to happen here in the next couple months. But I don't think it's one of those things where because you might be making such a long-term investment on this, Kevin, you do have to stop and take a breath.
And we're all assuming at this point that they are going to put him on the season-ending injury list and use that spot and pay somebody. We're assuming that. We don't know that, but we're assuming that because last year was such a huge cluster, rhymes with hockey puck, that the idea that they're going to try to do that again, that they're going to try to say, look, we're going to pay this guy and we're going to play with two DPs and we're going to try to get through this season without a real replacement for Riqui Puig, and we think we can do it. Hindsight is 2020. I understand why Will Kuntz did what he did last year. He got rid of Bergman. Bergman went on to play 24 games. He had 14 starts, 1,277 minutes, the second highest total in his 4 MLS seasons. Delgado went to LAFC, played 34 games, had a career high 3 goals and 3 goals and 9 assists.
But don't get 90%. But don't get it confused though. Don't get it confused. Those are salary cap moves, right? Like, yeah.
Well, they were, but I think they were also, they were both midfielders. I think he thought that with Royce he had to cover in the midfield. My point is again, hindsight is 2020. It's really not super fair to criticize him, but I think he learned, and the Galaxy learned the lesson that, if the guy's going to be out for a substantial part of the season, let's put him on the list and let's go out and get a replacement because, trying to hobble through that last year, it didn't work. So we're assuming that the Galaxy are going to go out and do this. We don't know that. But I think it would be a huge mistake if they just tried to muddle through again. And again, this means Phil's got to write a check to somebody. It's not my money. But last season was so bad. The Galaxy have to do whatever is possible to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, but you don't also, let's be very clear. There needs to be no panic in this. This is not like, oh, hey, go out and get Giovanni Dos Santos because why else? We gotta get somebody, that type of thing. That doesn't make sense. And I don't think that this under Will Kuntz is in that position. Yes, the situation is bad. Yes, I would say the timing is almost as good as you could expect it if you were trying to replace Riqui Puig. Remember we kept saying we said, you really want to see Riqui Puig play because you want to see what kind of Riqui Puig you're going to have because you may need to replace him if he's not going to be the same player that he was, right? We talked about that all through last fall as the Galaxy tried to round out things, being like, yeah, I get them not playing, but for me, it was about getting Riqui back on the field as soon as he was ready to be. And playing him so that way you could see where it was. The 1 year after ACL surgery is still a reasonable amount of time, so that didn't see anything. But, this isn't, and after everybody threw their computer against the wall at the LA Galaxy front office, I don't know if that's what happened. I just imagine what that looked like whenever that phone call came in. Again, not planned, not something that seemed like it was going to happen. They threw their computers against the wall, and then they took a deep breath, and they sat back and they said, you know what? This is something that we've probably been preparing for a little bit anyway. We didn't know what we were going to get from Riqui Puig for 2026. Now we know we have to have the answer, which is we're going to get nothing from Riqui Puig for 2026, which is way less than what we thought. So,
and you and I, we did talk on the show quite a bit about, I was one, and I think you were too. A lot of people will put Riqui on for the last 45 minutes of the season, second half, last game of the season. Just let him run around. I do think it was good holding out of the friendly because, again, that would have been a situation where, someone trying to make a name for themselves takes Riqui out. But the last 45 minutes of the MLS season, let him run around, make sure he's not gun shy, make sure he can cut and move. We were told that the rehab was going well, and
I believe that they thought it was going well. I don't believe there was anybody who didn't think it was going well, which is crazy.
Which brings us to what happened between the time that he left, Dignity Health Sports Park, where he was training alongside the team. I don't know if he ever got into a full training session with the team, but he was training alongside the team. What happened between that time and the time he went home? Was nobody monitoring this? I mean, he said he went, Riqui intimated that he went to the doctor for a checkup, and the doctor said, we need another surgery. Again, I don't know how this works for, soccer players in Spain, but I can't imagine you go in, and take my blood pressure, check my weight. Oh, by the way, you need another surgery. I have to believe that he went in and said, this hurts a little bit. And then the doctor looked at it and said, my God, we got the same doctor that did the surgery, a year ago, 14 months ago, says, I have to go do this again. You would have to suspect at some point that Riqui said, this feels, it hurts a little bit or something. Somebody would have noticed along that's my disbelief, is that there was no inkling that any of this happened. And the Galaxy people I talked to were so stunned and angry that it caught them by surprise too. So one thing, you talked a little bit about, they're just not going to go out and get anybody. This is a different regime than maybe we're used to with the Galaxy under the previous ownership or regime, when Chris Klein and Jovan Karowski were there. I remember Ziggy Smith told me a story that when he came in and Van Dam went back to Belgium,
right.
he went to the player development people and said, okay, who's on our list now? Who's the next center back that we have? Ziggy said all teams keep a list of guys they can go get somewhere in the world that can play positions if they need somebody. And the Galaxy said, what list? We don't have a list. And so they started from scratch, and they wound up with Michael Ciani because he was represented by an agent the Galaxy already knew, and they needed somebody immediately. This is not that Galaxy team. I think Gordon Kleshton and Will Kuntz and everyone else, I think they probably have a very deep list of midfielders they might be able to go talk to around the world, around MLS, and bring in, and they probably looked at it. This guy plays this style. This guy has a good salary. This guy, we know the agent, whatever it is. I think there's a list there, and I think they're well positioned to act on this, as opposed to some Galaxy, front offices in the past. I think it's in a much better position, but being in position to act on something isn't acting on something. They need to actually do it now.
Let's get to some super chats, which we have been ignoring here as we opine on the situation. Kevin and I have been talking about this all weekend and everything else. So, this is really just a regurgitation of the phone calls we've had. I've talked with Damian Calhoun a little bit about it. It's funny. Whenever news like this breaks, you start reaching out to the other guys in the press box. Did you hear that? Like, I think Damian was like, I've been at a basketball tournament all day. Is that real? Right? And I called him. I'm like, yeah, man, it is. Rupert says, evening, gents, not feeling so optimistic. Looks like lightning does strike twice. Season-ending injury list. Does LA Galaxy sign a new DP in Ricky's place? Got to be a big-time 10. No? Oh, boy. $10 super chat from Rupert. We appreciate that. Aaron, $2 super chat. Aaron, simple, devastated. I think Ricky's devastated as well, and I can't imagine what this does to him mentally. I mean, the brave social media face and all this. I'll tell you right now, if that happened to me, I'm like getting drunk in a corner for a couple days, and nobody better talk to me. And then after that, we can deal with everything after it. But it's one of those things. Why do bad things happen to good people? I imagine Riqui, after working as hard as he did and doing all that stuff, and let's put no fault of this at his feet at this point, working so hard, it just has to be the biggest gut punch. And so I don't know. Josh from Tarzana, $20 super chat. Certainly appreciate that. Josh, happy New Year, G's. Here's to hoping Chef Kuntz is already cooking up a new designated player with Uncle Phil's approval. Josh from Tarzana. Very good. $2 super chat from Gary. Too many. Gary, I'm going to change it. Too many negative Nancy's in the chat, but that's what the chat is all about. They are negative. And then Adam, $2 super chat. Why was Ricky's new surgery decided to do just now? If you just find it, I guess it's time to do just now. I mean, let's go with the what was it? The Occam's razor sort of discussion here, which is Ricky goes in for a routine, they do a scan, and they find a tear in the ACL that wasn't there the last time they checked. That is one of those things that could be. Maybe Ricky doesn't even feel it at this point, Kevin. Maybe it's a small enough tear that basically it has retorn itself. That seems like a likely scenario, especially being it came out of nowhere. But having said that, this is the reality that the LA Galaxy now live in. I know people want names. I think we got to figure out what the LA Galaxy need to do in order to, find what qualities they're looking for. I think certainly somebody creative, but I will also say that there are a couple different ways that you might be able to fight your way around this. And some of that is that maybe you find somebody who is positionally, fluid. So that way you could get somebody who maybe plays in the midfield, in the middle, can play there, but also can play out on the wings. And why would you want somebody who can play out on the wings? Because you may want to move Joseph Paintsel up into the 9. The LA Galaxy is still working possibly on trying to find a 9. It was a question about where you can find and what's available. There's a lot of people who are talking about Christian Espinoza from San Jose. He plays more of a wing position, but he's creative. And if you can move Joseph Paintsel up into the 9 and Espinoza out on the left or right with Gabriel Peck on the other side, you at least have some creativity in there. You're still going to have to ask somebody in that center, possibly Marco Royce there, Kevin. But you're going to ask somebody in that center to be creative, to go after and try to find some of that creativity in the midfield. Something the LA Galaxy did better towards the end of the year, but was not a strong suit of them, last year.
Well, yeah, Greg Vanney said, after that 16-game unbeaten winless streak, the season got away from them. But he did say, the final 18 games, the final half of the season, they figured some stuff out. They did have a winning record. They played at a pace that would have been worth 49 points and 14 wins if they had played that way all season. They beat some really good Mexican clubs in Leagues Cup. He said we did figure out how to play, but we figured it out too late. And he's, his feeling was, look, this is a positive thing we can take into next season. Now that they're without Riqui, I think, to me, it seems like two things happen. One, you can't replace Riqui. He's irreplaceable. The way he plays, you can't go out and find a guy who's going to take Riqui's spot. So I think two things happen. One of two things happen. One is you find somebody who is as close as you can get, and you try to play the same style, knowing that you're not going to be as dynamic as you are when Ricky's there, and you try to play the same style and just keep that consistent, or you play a completely different style, and Riqui has come to define them the way they played since he got here. You play a completely different style because you don't have the pieces. You play to the personnel that you have, and maybe that goes back to what we had talked about earlier. Maybe they just scrap everything, and they do go with a three-man back line, which
right.
It looks like some of these acquisitions have suggested. But I did want to add something what you talked about earlier. What's lost in all this? Everyone is gnashing their teeth about what this means for the Galaxy. In 2019, I went to Spain and I went to Barcelona, and I did a story on La Masia, the academy there, and everybody there at the time, 2019, they were just incessantly talking about Riqui Puig, this new kid they had, Riqui Puig. He's so good. He's so dynamic. He has such a high soccer IQ. He can dribble. He's a really good passer. He went on, he played 40 some games, I think, for Barcelona, in different tournaments in La Liga and then Champions League and other things. He was a star on the rise, and he fell out of favor there. There were some coaching changes, some other things happened. He fell out of favor, wound up in MLS. He wanted to go back to Europe. And what I'm getting to with this, you talked about what it means for Riqui as opposed to just not what it means for the Galaxy. Here's a kid, 26 years old, has already lost one season in the prime of his career. Now he's going to lose another season. He'll be 27 before he comes back. And he'll be 28 by the end of that season. He wanted to go back to Europe. That was sort of his dream. And I think if he had another season like 2024, if he followed that with another season like that, I think he probably would have gone back to Europe, or at least he would have got some interest. Now he's coming back at 27. He's coming back as damaged goods. He's missed 2 seasons. His career is on a completely different path now, regardless of how good he plays. And that's, as you mentioned, that's got to be beyond devastating to a guy who looked like he sort of had the world at his fingertips, and now that's gone.
Yeah. I think we talked about this even last year, whenever Riqui suffered the injury, that I thought it would probably prolong his stay and possibly make him an MLS lifer, right? One of the guys who would stay in Major League Soccer, just because you're missing that sort of transition period where, like you said, 25, 26, had a great season, possibly could have lost Riqui at the end of the 2024 season when the LA Galaxy won MLS Cup, just because there was so much hype behind him. Him being injured meant that he stayed. The LA Galaxy securing him to a longer-term contract, 2027, all those things sort of lined up. And to me, I was like, hey, with that one injury, you're talking about a guy now who maybe doesn't go back to Europe. Maybe that's good news for the Galaxy. Maybe Riqui Puig plays for the Galaxy for the next 6 years, right? And is one of the best in Major League Soccer to have ever played the game. But the injury is the thing that sort of set him there. It's hard to be that optimistic about what's happening whenever you get another season like this. I am, and I would imagine the Galaxy are concerned, but I think you have to be concerned if you sit there and say that you know what you're going to get from Riqui Puig. I think that same thing was going to be true this season, which is you don't know what you're going to get from Riqui Puig. I think it's doubly true whenever you have to have him ready for the preseason in 2027 and you're expecting him to come back. I mean, the bottom line is that next year, we'll get through this. We're 5 days into the 2026 season here, and we're already next year at this time. Everybody's going to be walking on eggshells, worried about Riqui Puig again, and whether or not he is going to be fully fit to start the season, and whether or not he is even a shadow of the player he was. I don't know that that's his concern right now, because his concern has to be working back and doing all that. But I'm sure in the back of his mind, he's also questioning, will I be the same player? People in the chat talking about, oh, well, I saw Riqui Puig. He was shooting at targets and shooting at goal in Barcelona a couple days. Yeah, that's what you do when you're a soccer player. Like, all of these things were progressions that we fully expected. So I don't know that there's anything there. By the way, even if this happened in training, at this point where he, if let's say he was back with the Galaxy and it's preseason and they find this out and stuff like that, then, there would be question marks about, what happened and how that happened and the timing of everything. So it doesn't really matter, where it happened or how it happened now. It's the same thing. There's going to be question marks. Ricky's going to have question marks in his head. The Galaxy are going to have question marks in their head, which is why for me that you have to, if you're Will Kuntz here, you find a piece that fits into that midfield. You find a Riqui Puig replacement. It's not going to be the same, but you need to find somebody who fits into the system that Greg Vanney wants to put in that number 10, in that midfield spot, and you pay a whole bunch of money for him and you make him a designated player for the next 3 or 4 years, because having too many designated players that are good is a good problem to have. Having not enough designated players going into this 2026 season that are capable of competing for the 34 games that they're going to need to, plus the CONCACAF Champions Cup that, I think they were looking at possibly, doing better in this year than they did last year. It's really their only outside extracurricular tournament that they're going to be playing in this year. It was a point of focus. Now you have to sort of figure that out. That's one of the reasons that I think the clock is ticking a little bit. If I can go back on my earlier statement, is you need to put something in place that's going to work whenever you get in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and that happens early.
And the momentum is gone. If you go back to when Riqui first got hurt, he assisted on the winning goal in that conference final. He played 30 minutes on one knee, essentially. Then the Galaxy go on. His replacement, Bergman, wins MVP of MLS Cup. The Galaxy win. Everything at this time last year, if you can remember back to then, everything was roses and butterflies. Everyone was happy. Everyone was in a good mood. It's the greatest Galaxy season ever, and things are just going to get better. And even with Riqui being out, the feeling was, we'll get him back in time to make the playoffs. This is not a big deal. Okay, now fast forward a year. The Galaxy coming off the worst season in franchise history. It was doom and gloom, the black clouds everywhere. The 16-game winless streak was horrible. But then they go in the offseason, and Will Kuntz makes a couple of big signings, brings in a couple of big defenders, and immediately the thought is, wow, this is going to be a great offseason. That wasn't even our greatest need, defender. But they got two guys that, I'm sure they've got a forward lined up. That's what the Galaxy really need. And things were feeling good again. And now all of a sudden, that's turned. The signing the two defenders now, maybe that wasn't a good idea, because now maybe we need the money. The team needs the money to go get a Riqui replacement. And I still think those were great signings. But my point being is now everything has changed, and whatever little momentum the Galaxy had from the last couple of weeks and the signings and stuff, that's gone now, and the black clouds are back.
The Riqui replacement is covered by Riqui going on the season-ending injury list. There is no extra money. You just have to spend it. In terms of, you have to spend AEG's money in order to do it. There's no salary cap concern with that, however.
No, there isn't. But like you've always been saying, is someone has to write that check, and they just wrote $2 million worth of checks, and now you're asking them for more.
Well, yeah, but I mean, also you were expected to probably write those $2 million in checks, because those are also salary cap moves, right? Like, those are under the salary cap. You're going to spend. We know the Galaxy will be maxed out at the salary cap. We know they're going to spend X number of dollars. That's already a given. We already have that locked in. They're not a Philadelphia or a Colorado Rapids or one of the smaller market teams that tries to moneyball a whole bunch of stuff. Sometimes that hurts them. Sometimes sometimes it doesn't. But right now, when they need it, they have some of the deepest pockets in all of Major League Soccer. And so I would expect that even though Will Kuntz has to go ask for the money, that they're going to get that money and they're going to be able to do it. But it is covered. There is cap room to be able to put whoever they want to sign onto this. Again, I will caution people by saying, don't think this is a one-year signing. Don't think you're going to go out and get a designated player for 1 year. I do not believe that's the case. Deal with the trouble of having too many designated players in 2027. That's fine. That's a great problem to have. The LA Galaxy were able to buy their way out of the Giovanni Dos Santos situation whenever they had multiple contracts and all that sort of stuff. The Galaxy, because they have money, congratulations, welcome to the deep pockets of a team in Los Angeles. Because the LA Galaxy have money, they will probably be able to use those buyouts. Here's the other thing, though. If you were looking at a buyout, perhaps for somebody like maybe Zonka, is that still on the table now? Because that's money you're going to have to pay, but it does nothing for you in terms of what you're actually getting on the field. You're basically paying Zonka not to play. Does that still go through? Do you have to maneuver some other things? What other things are you going to have to do in order so that way the spend that you hand to AEG and Phil Anschutz isn't way more than it should be at this point? You're trying to dig yourself out of a hole a little bit here because it's unexpected. But, I don't think that the Galaxy have a blank check in all of this either.
Well, and didn't they spend like $1.2 million or something last year when they made the Brewing trade? They got somebody from Nashville, and he never played for the team as a midfielder. And I think they might have had to pay his salary as well. But
they bought out that contract. Yes, it
was.
But
that was money that.
Yeah, it was lesser of the evils. Whenever they could either buy out Brugman's contract or buy out. Why can't I remember his name? It was Chris something.
I can't remember.
Right?
But my point is they had to write a check for a guy who didn't play, and that's got to be getting old. For Phil Anschutz. I know he's got more money than God, but it's still, nobody likes to just keep writing checks for things that they're not going to get. You and I talked before we came on too, and there has been a lot, this timing is not good. There's no way you can say this is good timing, but MLS has talked a lot about redoing the salary structure, and they're coming up with the
Sean Davis, by the way. Sean Davis was who it was. Thank you.
Yeah, so they're coming to the new format. They're going to go to divisions now. We don't know how that's going to play out, but that is going to happen. We have the new season. MLS has talked about a new salary structure. There will be some changes. We don't know what it'll be. More TAM money, more JAM money. Will it be a fourth DP? Will it be a much larger salary cap? My point is, by the time the Galaxy have to, let's say they bring in a guy for a couple of years at a DP salary. By the time they have to figure this out, by the time they have to make their Gio Dos Santos decision, the rules may be different. There may be a fourth DP. There may be more money available. It may not turn out to be as big a problem as it appears to be right now. A year from now, it may not be that big a problem. We don't know that. The Galaxy have to assume that things aren't going to change. But, it may not be the albatross that it appears to be right now, a year from now.
Yeah. All these things, this is a complex situation. They're never easy to sort of figure out, but in general terms, the LA Galaxy are, in the basic of terms, we can assume the Galaxy are going to place Riqui Puig on the season-ending injury list, and because of that, they will then be able to go out and get a replacement. What that replacement looks like, we'll certainly tell. Some people are saying, hey, do you just change over to a 4 U22 model, right? So you stick with 2 DPs, you bring in another U22, you declare yourself that model, and you go out and spend money on a U22 instead. Possibly. I think the Galaxy are probably not going to be a 4 U22 type of team, and I don't know if ever. It always seems like they're going to have 3 designated players. I would expect they have 3 designated players. Kevin, we had Nelson Rodriguez on the show, and he seemed optimistic that before the new season sort of took place that there would be new roster rules in place. And I think that that's not a bad thing to sort of hedge yourself on, is to try and figure that out. Worst case scenario is you sell somebody like Gabriel Peck, right? What's worst case scenarios? In order to get into designated players compliance, that you'd have to sell a young player who has a lot of prospects. I know he hasn't been playing great last year. Assume that he plays better this year, because I think that's a given. But put him into these places, let him sort of drum up all sorts of interesting stuff, and the Galaxy will be able to sell him for some amount of money. By the way, even if Gabriel Peck sort of has the same season as he had this year, I imagine somebody somewhere is willing to pay $2 or $3 million for him, and that gets you $3 million plus a designated player spot open. there's worse things in the world than that, right? So a lot of it's like selling a car, right? Yeah. Whenever you bought the car for let's use crazy stupid numbers. When you bought the car for $20,000, you got to drive it around. So when you sold it for 12, you probably got $8,000 worth of driving around in that car. So you felt pretty good about it. I think that's the case with Gabriel Peck. Regardless of sort of what you end up selling him, you got a lot of mileage out of Gabriel Peck. So I think that is the route that I would see, is worry about 2027 and the designated players in 2027, but go out and find somebody who can be maybe your longer term replacement for Riqui Puig, because there's no guarantee at this point that Riqui comes back at all or in any sort of shape that resembles what he was there.
Yeah, and that's why I think the Galaxy have a decision to make, and I do think probably the best move going forward is, again, you're not going to replace Riqui. I think you have to find another way of playing, another sort of style. It's really hard to change that in a team, especially when you've had the success they had in 2024. But the personnel's not there anymore. I mean, if you don't have
Riqui Puig,
yeah, if you don't have a dynamic, forward, you don't play. You don't try to score 15 goals a game. Barcelona changed when Messi left. I mean, that was kind of obvious. The Galaxy are going to have to change, and maybe in a sort of weird way, the defensive signings they made, could, again, we've talked about it before, the idea of a three-man back line with a couple of wingers. Maybe they become very dynamic in that way, and in a sense, if they did that, it kind of bypass the midfield and just work up the wings and stay out of the central midfield. Maybe that's the way they play, and then of course they'd have to go back if a healthy Riqui comes back, because you're not going to just have him play a defensive midfielder role. He's going to come back and do what he does if he's healthy. So, but certainly they can't repeat the mistake of last year, and I have to give all those guys credit and assume that they learned the lessons of last year. Painful though it was, I think they learned it, and I don't think they're going to repeat it this year.
Yeah, well, they also have more money to spend so far on the salary cap this year than they did last year. So, again, there's a lot of different views on how it comes into this season versus last season. $15 super chat from executive producer Herb. Happy New Year's, Josh and Kevin. See you at CVI. By the way, how many stars on the Pavone rumors? Just kidding. That's the big joke in the Discord, is that they're going to go back and get Christian Pavone, because that's the rumor every year. Anytime there's any rumor talked about, it's Christian Pavone. So, which it used to be Pato.
Would you take him? Would you take him?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think. Again, I don't know that going out and getting a winger is your solved sort of problem. I would really like to see somebody in the midfield that can help, because you're going to have Winder, and you're going to have Cerrillo, and you're going to have Sanabria. You might have Hack, Justin Hack, coming into that defensive midfield area as well. So you have and you have Marco Reus in there. You have some midfielders, but I feel like you're missing that dynamic midfielder. I was waiting for them to sort of sign somebody who was in their prime / to be like more of a backup midfielder for Riqui, to help Riqui out. That just elevates that particular signing to now a designated player spot. So I think that's where you spend the money, and you don't worry about when Riqui comes back. That sucks.
But the Galaxy still need a forward. We haven't addressed, the team hasn't addressed that yet. I don't think you go into the season saying Christian Ramirez is going to play 90 minutes 34 times. I just don't think that
we are an emergency room scenario now, Kevin. We are triaging. All right. This is how.
If that's where we are, what do you think about Diego Fagundes? Do you think anyone in Galaxy has mentioned that?
No, because by the way, I think Diego Fagundes is a great player, and I like him more than probably most people do. I think you need a designated player to fill that spot. Stop messing around. This is, again, we're in triage. The defense has been taken care of. One of the places that I would have liked the LA Galaxy to maybe done some more things, which I think is now probably out of the case, is at goalkeeper. That's okay. I think Novak Mitrovic is going to stand on his head this year. Revenge tour coming. Christian Ramirez up top at the number 9. Revenge tour coming. At this point, you need to triage with what you can do and what you can afford and what you can put. Now, the Galaxy still may have some cap space move around. If you move some players, like we expect that Zonka possibly gets bought out, or that maybe Maya Yoshida gets traded, that puts money back into the coffers that allows you to go out and do some other things. But I think the triage position right now, which is, you fix things and you get them so that way they are functional. Maybe they don't look pretty. Maybe they're not the perfect solution, but you want things to be functional. I think you go out and find a designated player in that slot. That's going to be my opinion, at least for tonight. I'm sure I'll sleep on it and have all sorts of other thoughts about how it goes. This is a crazy situation. And
But they did play well. The idea going into last season again was Marco Royce is going to fill that role, at least in a stopgap way. He's going to be the guy who's going to make the offense go through the midfield. It'll be Marco. He did play well for much of the season. Went a slow start because of the injuries. You mentioning triage. Why wouldn't the Galaxy say, we're going to try this again? We're going to believe Marco's going to be healthy this year, and we're going to try to fill that spot with Marco Royce.
Wait,
Why wouldn't you do that?
You just said that they were smarter this year.
Well, I think they are, but I'm just you're mentioning triage, and we need to address. The team needs to address that midfield position. If I'm thinking that the striker position might be even a little bit more important. So I'm, why the
striker position isn't? Wait, do you know why the striker position isn't as important? Because who can play striker? Joseph Paintsel, right? So so you could play him up there. So if Christian Ramirez is 1 and Joseph Paintsel is 2, you probably have good strikers there. If you have the ability for somebody to play on either one of the wings, whether that's Cuevas or whether that's Aude sort of coming up into wing backs and doing that sort of stuff, that sort of solves. So again, I think you can maneuver your way out of, yes, a striker was big on my list. And if everything was perfect and Riqui Puig was back and there was no issues, I would say a striker is still high on my list. Let them take care of the DP slot now. Let them find that. And then if you want to go out and find a forward to sort of back up some of that as a striker and number 9, who you think you can be an improvement on Christian Ramirez, then I'm there. I'm fine. But right now it's about designated player in midfield. And people are somebody asked, is it easier destructive collectors, easier to find a mid with Ricky's profile or easier to change the system? You're not going to find somebody who does the same thing as Riqui, but there are plenty of offensive 10s. So find somebody who is capable of being an offensive 10 who likes to control. And by the way, you're looking at the entire world of soccer. The world of football is your oyster right now. It sucks it's in the wintertime. People are less likely to move. But having said that, there is no place on earth that the LA Galaxy can't scour to try to pull from here whenever you have a designated player spot open.
Well, Landon Donovan was good. Maybe he could come back.
No. Well, why don't you, Billy Sharp? You want to get on that one again?
Sharp, there's the striker. How about Anton Guesman? He's always wanted to come to MLS.
Harry says this: Kevin's insistence on getting a 9 without a creative 10 to feed them first is so baffling. I'm in that same general thing. We're smarter now. We saw what happened last year. We're smarter, right? We're gonna assume we're smarter. So one of the things you need is that somebody needs to feed those wingers, and somebody needs to feed that striker. And if you can find that person, then the Galaxy will be a better team. Right now, I don't think. Listen, I'm fine with how they finished the season last year. They were an okay/good team in the last third of the season, which is really cool. Whenever there's no pressure because you already got knocked out of everything. Maybe that's unfair.
That's true. No, I think that is fair. I think that's a good point. Has anyone seen Kevin De Bruyne lately?
You're just going to go find everything. But this is something that I think the Galaxy have to focus on, and I think they will. Before we close out, I wanted to show you something that nobody cares about, but MLS did put out their new ball, and I wanted so red, white, and blue, and everything. Always nice to see a new ball. MLS. So if anybody wants to send me one of those along, and everybody knows the answer to this, a ball rack that can be placed over here, I don't think I have a lot of cachet. All right. I know this whenever I try to get stuff done. But the little bit of cachet that I have, Kevin, I would love. I will trade free train rides for anybody who can make this happen. Ball rack ball. That's what I've wanted since they first put it out in whatever stupid competition. I think Leagues Cup first had the ball. No, racks.
I think it was the wasn't it the MLS is back when they couldn't touch the balls because of COVID.
It was even before that. It was before that.
Okay.
It was some international tournament that everybody was playing in, or the ICC, right? You remember the International Champions Cup or whatever, BS thing is? And they had ball racks, and I'm like, man, I love those ball racks. Ever since then, we're going on almost maybe close to 10 years now. I have wanted a rack with said ball, and I do not have a rack with said ball yet. So
Well, does Tom Braun still listen to this podcast? The Galaxy, they probably not.
No,
But if they listen, they have 6 MLS Cups.
Yeah.
They can give you one. They still have 5, and you can put it in the background there. It'd look pretty cool. Did they really need to keep all 6 of them?
I don't know. Ball stand, yes, a ball stand back here. By the way, my wife got me one of these like squeezy things, right, where it's supposed to be for stress, and this was the extra like tough one that you're supposed to. I think I broke it tonight, so I have too many fidgeting problems. It just helps in the things. So, let's see. I got Jam says, Josh, I can send you an old ASO size 3 ball if you're interested. I have plenty of those, Jams. My kid's into size 3 stuff right now. It's ridiculous. All the stuff, all the sports, Kevin, all the sports. Kids went back to school today. Felt weird. One of my buddies, I usually call on the way home from work. He's usually out walking his dog. I called him up and I said, and he goes, hey, and I go, you out walking the dog? He goes, yep. I go, we're back, baby. We're back. Same schedule. We're back into it. We finally figured it out again. So I hope that everybody got back to their schedule. And sort of enjoyed their time off. I can only imagine. I know that some Galaxy people were on their vacations, little tiny times over the holiday, where and those got interrupted by the Riqui.
Well,
news.
yeah, Riqui is not back to the schedule, and he is not enjoying his time off.
He's not enjoying his time off. Hey, all the best for Riqui to come back, by the way. I hate to see this. I have always said, Kevin, that whenever I cover a team, and this is me, and I won't put this on you, but when I cover a team, I like to see guys succeed. It makes it more fun for me. It makes it more fun for the guys and the whole thing. And I'd like to see Riqui Puig succeed and get back on the field.
It's so funny you bring that up because I get asked that a lot. Like, you're a Dodger fan, right? No, I'm not. No. I'm not a Galaxy fan. Let's make that clear.
Yeah.
I sometimes stumble and say we, and I don't mean to do that, but I am not a Galaxy fan. I'm not an LAFC fan. I'm not a Dodger fan. I cover those teams, and I try to be objective, and that's the only way you can be objective. But at the same time, I will say, having covered a number of different teams closely in a number of different sports, it is much more fun when the team is winning than it is. I've covered, in Miami, I covered a lot of really bad Marlins teams, and by mid-August, it is not fun to be around there. So I always root for a story. I root for a good story, and that's what I hope happens in the game. But over the course of a season, it is much better to cover a team that is successful than a team that isn't successful, because everybody's in a good mood, and it's a lot more fun to be around them.
Although 2017 was a crazy ride too. Let's not be that was entertaining for me, let me tell you. So
entertaining, but I don't know how much fun it was.
I don't know, man. There was some crazy stuff. So no, always good. By the way, Harry says the ball has all the MLS team stadium coordinates on it. Apparently, this is like right up my alley. They like copied me. I was doing all the latitude and longitude of the stadiums before. The LA Galaxy went 16 winless, and nobody cared about where the next loss was coming from. Yeah, man, they got coordinates. They got latitude and longitude. Yeah, I'm gonna need to have one of those. I think back here on a ball rack.
That's an Adidas
stand.
ball, right? It's an
yes.
Adidas ball, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%. So, all right. LA Galaxy now faced with the task of moving forward without Riqui Puig in 2026. We'll have all that coverage. I do have some surprising and exciting news for everybody as well, that we will be back to 2 shows a week. So Thursday coming up, Hammer has already checked in and we'll be ready to go on Thursday. God only knows what will be said and what we can find within the next 3 or 4 days to talk about on Thursday night, but we will be back. So welcome to 2026, everybody. Welcome to, I guess, season 18 of Corner of the Galaxy. We'll get all the graphics changed here in due time. I'll work on that.
Check out the LA Times story tomorrow. I go much deeper, well, as deep as I can in the space I have. I go deeper into the Riqui thing, and with a big assist from Josh Guesman on the careful edit. So it was a goal by me, assist from Josh Guesman. And that'll be in the LA Times tomorrow online at 4 a.m.
Awesome. I'll be up waiting for it, I'm sure, with bated breath. Yeah, we'll do
exactly.
it. So, all right. Anything else, sir?
That's it.
All right, let's get on out of here. If you're looking for
luck,
Mr. Kevin, the Panda Baxter, you can find him at KBaxter11 on all the social media sites, and then head on over to LATimes.com. As he said, a Riqui Puig article coming out about 4 a.m., so when you wake up, it'll be out there. Make sure you check it out, LATimes.com, and search for LA Galaxy News, and Kevin will be right there for you. If you're looking for me on any socials, it's at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com, and then SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere that you can find your podcasts, you can find Corner of the Galaxy. All right. That does it for Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter. I'm Josh Pato Guesman. First show of 2026 here, already in crisis mode for the LA Galaxy. It's going to be an interesting one to see how it plays out. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your week. Get back into the swing of things, and we'll see you on Thursday night. For Mr. Kevin Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast, and be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.